right, the young girls are over here in their own little kennel here, and they are trying to keep cool with an ice ring that I froze with some canned corn. So I wanted them to pick at the ice and keep cool, and they're having fun doing that. They really loved it. And I found this watermelon in our garden, so I'm going to bust it open. It may not be very red, but it is very sweet. And the big girls ended up really enjoying some of the rind out in the grass. Hey everybody, welcome back to Sweetwater Place. If you're new here, I hope that you'll subscribe and please hit the like button. That will help us get out a little bit more on the algorithm. And please, if you subscribe, hit that notification bell. That will notify you whenever we put out a new video. Usually here at Sweetwater Place, we just kind of it's a life potpourri. We do a little bit of everything. Try to concentrate on the beautiful things in life and things that make life worth living. Also, we do Bible studies from time to time, mostly for women. And so right now, this isn't that kind of a video. And if you don't want to hear about, preparing for hard times and food shortages and things like that, certain things that are happening in the world, don't watch this video. That's fine. It's not an ugly video or anything. I think it's a real video. I just want to be real here a little bit and talk about preparing for tough times. Now, I went to a neighborhood market almost 3 years ago, Walmart neighborhood market. And that's like a mini Walmart. It's not someplace that I would really rather do all my shopping, but at some point I found myself going there because it was convenient. And so they do have produce, they have regular food, they have, all the things that you would want at Walmart, just they don't have the clothes, they don't have a whole lot of bunk, you just go and get your groceries. And so I did like that. They don't have good produce at Walmart, though. I'll say that right off. But anyway, the shelves were all just about bare, except for some really weird things, corny puffs and eel spread or something was left. It's like all the regular food was hit and it was gone. And people were just, getting everything they can, even the produce. There was hardly any produce. There was no meat. I mean, I was stunned because it was really like I was watching a scene from one of these apocalyptic type movies, you know what I mean, where everybody rushes the store and just starts throwing things in a cart and they don't even care what it is. And it was very weird to me. It was a shock. And I thought, okay, if this is it, and I was there to do my weekly shopping, I started trying to find what I could, and I ended up with a bunch of weird stuff in my basket, but I didn't want to go home empty-handed. So here I am in line, and I happen to be in back of two, and they had immigrated here to the United States, and they were talking about and they're talking in another language, and then all of a sudden they looked at me and they said, they're older than I was, and they said, we have seen this before. This isn't good. We've seen this kind of reaction. There's kind of like steps that are going to happen next, they were trying to say, right? And we were going to be seeing that basically in our country. And that, coupled with the whole shocking experience, it really, I don't want to say it frightened me, but it woke me up. It was like a cold glass of water in the face. Because I had gotten into this normalcy bias that nothing like that could ever happen, to my country, to my area, to my life. And I didn't realize, when I went home with my garbled mess of groceries that couldn't make any sense of, it was like being on, what's that show? That Chef's Challenge show where they get a basket, Chopped. They get a basket of weird stuff and they're told to make a meal out of it. That was what I came home with. It had just really stuck with me, what they said and what was happening. And I looked at my pantry and I realized that I had started to do a lot of shopping week to week. Now, granted, in Europe, they'll do like daily shopping, right? And they have these teeny tiny refrigerators to hold the fridge food for the day, which, to me back then when we were overseas, I thought that was strange because here in America we have extra large refrigerators. But nonetheless, I was doing weekly shopping and I realized that I did not have a couple of weeks, 2-3 weeks or whatever more than that to fall back on in case something like this did happen, in case, now we live in the desert. We don't usually have hurricanes, earthquakes, tornadoes, things like that. But I realized that I hadn't prepared, for the inevitable of nature to take its course, whatever that was, or maybe, something like this to happen. And so, little by little, I really changed the way that I did things and the amount of preparedness that my family would have should an event take place, a multitude of different types of event take place. I started really trying to change things up, and I was very diligent, and I have been the ant working constantly 24/7, around the years. And I will tell you now, I am in a much, much better position and will not end up. I have vowed that we will not end up in that position again. But I should have known better. I grew up pretty normal. My parents led kind of like the normal life. We had all the amenities of a middle class lifestyle growing up, and then they made some bad business decisions, which can happen, but they were not very, I think, experienced in those types of decisions. My dad bought a restaurant. Things just weren't going really well. Location was a big factor in that. And he ended up losing that. We ended up losing everything, except they were by some miracle able to hang on to the house that we were in. And I think that was a miracle. But the times that we went through, and thank goodness the house that we were out in the country and they had land. They had some land, and my dad was fortuitous in his thinking. And he had planted a really large garden. And so by the time we went through this time, we had vegetables coming in. We had some fruits and melons, but we had a ton of vegetables coming in. And we were able to buy things like rice and beans and, get the odd dozen eggs. Of course, that was during the time of free cheese. And so we had a lot of cheese, a lot of quesadillas, and we had a lot of food. We didn't have a lot of meat, but at that time we did have some chickens, and we had ducks. So we did have eggs from time to time. We ended up having to sell a lot of chickens because we had to sell the animals that we had because we were in hard times. I can go on about the hard times that we went through, and it would surprise you. But we went through times where we had thank goodness we had a septic and we had a well. Otherwise, I could tell you we wouldn't have had any water, because there was a point where we had all of our utilities turned off. We didn't have power. We didn't have gas. From time to time, we didn't have a phone most of the time, and we ended up, I remember, having to cook a lot on a camper stove. We had a camper at the time, which we also ended up selling. And then we ended up having to cook on a barbecue pit outside. Thank goodness we were in the country, because the way we were living, I felt like I would never want anybody to have known that we were living this way. And we didn't even have money for charcoal. So we had to, thank goodness on the land area, we had to hunt for sticks and things that we could burn, even out of the garage, things that we could burn so that we could cook our food. It was just amazing, and I will tell you, it was some of the best tasting food I've ever had, cooking everything out there on hardwood or whatever. But but it was tough times. And when you cook like that, you get really smelly and you get really dirty and you have to take a bath and you have nothing but cold water, which is, I mean, that is no fun. I remember there was this one month that, you know, it just got so rough. We ended up, my dad would just pile us into the car and say, you know what, there was a lake nearby with public showers. And that was a real treat to be able to take a hot shower, you know, with shampoo and everything, especially as a girl, because I was in junior high during this time, about to start high school. And so I was really self-conscious about all of, you know, my hygiene and everything. And so it wasn't a good, fun time, but I learned what my parents had to do to survive, what we had to do to survive. And somewhere, you know, when you go through times like that, you put that in the back of your brain and you get used to, you know, the amenities of life and being kind of spoiled and stuff like that. And you don't realize that someday we may end up having to go back to that. We may end up having to remember all those things that we did to survive. And, you know, those memories started flooding my mind again. Now, eventually they did, you know, get back up to a level where they moved into town and they had, you know, things again and they were rebuilding and stuff. But it was a little tough there for us for a while. And I learned a lot about the way that my mom shopped. We had 13 children in all. And plus my parents. So there were a lot of people to feed. So we ate very simply a lot. The way that she would shop was she would do a once a month shopping and she'd get a lot of beans and rice and non-fat dry milk. We'd have a lot of oatmeal and these kind of things to kind of fill in the gaps. Now she made homemade tortillas, so she would get this huge, you know, bag of flour, and then when the flour was done, she'd use it would come in a big flour sack. So she would wash those sacks and use those flour sacks as diapers for the little ones. And so there was nothing wasted at all. I have thought about the way that she shopped and the way that, you know, there were certain things that she had to put back because when she shopped, all the extras, the fruits and veggies, the eggs, whatever, that didn't last more than a week and a half, you know, 2 weeks at the most with this family because it was so big. And then we ate, you know, pretty much what we picked mixed with rice and beans. And that was, you know, the way that we lived, you know, during that time. But if I could give advice to somebody else from what I've seen going through those times so far, it would be build up an area and a buffer around your life that is going to keep you in case something goes wrong. Like my parents, they lost everything and they needed at least 3 to 6 months of food built up and emergency supplies and things like that. And at that time, we really didn't have it, and it was really hard. So that's just something that I think that everybody should do normally. And so if I could give anybody advice, it would be to do that and do it as quickly as possible, because with the inflation going up, it's going to be harder and harder for you to do that in the future, and it's going to cost a whole heck of a lot more. So do that very wisely and just keep working diligently, even when you don't feel like doing it. You're going to go shopping, buy a few extra cans, put them away in your extra pantry, and you'll see how that grows eventually, and it's going to help you when the times are lean. So anyway, I am going to let you go for now. Thanks for listening and taking a trip down some rough times with me. And let's talk about this in the future, in case it's on your mind. Have you gone through any hard times, and did you learn a lot through those? Okay, guys, I will see you next time. Again, I hope if you're visiting that you will choose to stay and subscribe. We'll talk more next time. Bye.